Hello, and welcome to Book Samarist. Picture this. It's Monday morning, and you're determined to make today productive. You've set aside 2 uninterrupted hours to finally work on that side project you've been dreaming about, a novel, a business idea, or maybe a fitness routine. You open your laptop, ready to crush it. But then, wait, maybe you should clean your desk first and check your email. And perhaps research that new software that might help streamline things. Before you know it, those 2 hours have vanished, and all you've done is watch motivational YouTube videos and reply to a few unnecessary emails. Sound familiar? That invisible force that sidetracks your progress? Steven Pressfield calls it resistance, and it's the greatest enemy to your dreams. In The War of Art, Steven Pressfield delivers a wake-up call for anyone struggling to bring their creative visions to life. He exposes the invisible force called resistance that stops us from pursuing our dreams and offers a battle-tested strategy to overcome it. This book isn't just about writing or art. It's about unlocking your potential and living boldly. If you're ready to stop dreaming and start doing, this is your call to arms. 1. What is resistance really? Resistance isn't just procrastination or laziness. It's a shape-shifting, insidious voice in your head that will tell you anything to stop you from doing meaningful work. It's sneaky. It sounds reasonable, logical even. You're too tired today. Start fresh tomorrow. Your idea isn't good enough yet. Research more. If it doesn't come naturally, maybe you're just not talented enough. But here's the thing. Resistance is actually a sign that you're standing on the edge of something important. Pressfield says, the more scared we are of a work or calling, the more sure we can be that we have to do it. Think of a writer staring at a blank page. J.K. Rowling, long before she became one of the most successful authors in the world, faced incredible resistance. She was broke, depressed, and raising a child alone. It would have been easy for her to give up and convince herself that writing a fantasy novel was a waste of time. Resistance must have whispered every day, "You'll never make it. Just focus on survival." But she showed up. Every single day, she rode through the doubt, fear, and fatigue. And because she fought resistance, the world got Harry Potter. Resistance shows up not because you're on the wrong path, but because you're on the right one. Pressfield argues that the projects we most want to do are the ones that face the fiercest resistance. If you care about something deeply, whether it's launching a business, writing a book, or simply getting healthier, you can bet resistance will come for you. Recognizing this changes everything. Instead of seeing doubt as a stop sign, you can start seeing it as a green light, a sign that what you're doing truly matters. What? You want to fight? Then here's the golden advice from Pressfield. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait for inspiration. Just show up and do the work. Create a ritual. Have a specific time and place where you sit down to do your work, no matter what. Embrace those bad days. Not every session will be brilliant, and that's okay. Pressfield insists that even showing up and creating something mediocre is a win against resistance. And most important, celebrate the battle. Every time you sit down to work despite the fear, you weaken resistance's grip. I once met an entrepreneur who shared how resistance nearly kept him from launching his tech startup. He spent months tweaking a product that was already good enough because resistance told him it wasn't perfect yet. But here's the twist. When he finally forced himself to launch, his early users loved the version he had hesitated to release. In hindsight, waiting for perfection would have cost him his first big opportunity. So what's the learning here? Resistance isn't your enemy. It's your compass, pointing you toward the work that truly matters. But knowing this isn't enough. How do you make sure you actually show up and fight every day? 2. Turning pro, the mindset shift. Imagine 2 different scenarios. In the first, an aspiring writer wakes up one morning and thinks, "I'll write today if I feel inspired." They wait for the perfect moment when their ideas flow effortlessly and distractions disappear. It never comes, and their book remains a vague idea in their mind. Now picture someone else, a professional author. They wake up, sit at their desk at 8 a.m., and start typing whether they feel inspired or not. Some days the words flow, other days, it's a grind. but by the end of the year, they have a finished manuscript. That's the difference between an amateur and a professional. And according to Pressfield, turning pro is the key to defeating resistance. So what does it really mean? It's not about getting paid or becoming famous. It's a mindset. Turning pro means committing to your work with discipline, courage, and consistency, treating it like a job rather than a hobby. According to Pressfields, there are 3 traits that make you professional. Consistency shows up every day, regardless of mood or circumstances. No drama. Doesn't wait for inspiration or perfect conditions. And last but not least, self-respect. Takes their craft seriously and holds themselves accountable. Consider Serena Williams. She didn't become one of the greatest tennis players by only practicing when she felt like it. Every day, rain or shine, she trained with precision and focus. Even after setbacks and injuries, she showed up. That's the pro mindset. Pressfield argues that this approach isn't limited to athletes or creatives. It applies to anything worth pursuing. Want to start a business, master an instrument, or improve your fitness? Turning pro is the way to get there. Why it matters, you ask? When you operate as a professional, you remove emotions and excuses from the equation. You don't wait for motivation because you know it's fleeting. Instead, you rely on habits, discipline, and a sense of purpose. This shift is liberating. When you turn pro, you stop negotiating with yourself. Should I work today? Do I have the energy? Is it good enough? None of that matters anymore. Your job is simply to show up and do the work. There are some practical ways to turn pro. 1. Establish a routine. Set a specific time and place to do your work every day, even if it's just 30 minutes. 2. Separate identity from work. Stop taking failure personally. 3. Master the mundane. Embrace the repetitive, unglamorous aspects of your craft. 4. Commit to the long game. Understand that mastery takes time and persistence. I once spoke to a graphic designer who struggled with freelancing. She'd go weeks without taking any project seriously because resistance convinced her that her work wasn't good enough. After reading The War of Art, she decided to turn pro by setting strict working hours and treating her freelancing as a 9-to-5 job. The result? Within months, she was not only landing more clients but also creating her best work. The simple decision to show up consistently changed everything. Turning pro is a game changer, but it's not without challenges. One of the biggest hurdles? Fear. And surprisingly, Pressfield believes that fear isn't the enemy. It's actually your guide. 3. Fear, your greatest guide. Picture this. You're standing at a crossroads in life. One path feels comfortable, predictable, and safe. The other is terrifying. It's uncharted territory, full of uncertainty, but it excites you at the same time. Your heart races at the mere thought of taking that route. Most of us instinctively choose the comfortable path because it feels secure. But what if I told you that fear is actually pointing you in the right direction? Pressfield argues that the stronger the fear, the more important the work is to your growth and potential. Fear is not your enemy. Fear shows up when something truly matters to us. If it didn't matter, we wouldn't care enough to be afraid. Pressfield flips the traditional view of fear. Instead of avoiding it, we should use it as a compass to guide us toward the work or decisions that have the most meaning. Just follow this rule. The more resistance or fear you feel toward a project or decision, the more likely it is that it's the right thing to pursue. In The War of Art, Pressfield shares how he felt crippling fear every time he sat down to write. Despite years of experience, the blank page still intimidated him. But instead of running from that fear, he learned to see it as a sign that writing was his true calling. This mindset allowed him to push through the doubt and produce meaningful work. So why it matters? Imagine if every time fear showed up, you viewed it as a green light rather than a red flag. Consider some scenarios. Like you want to pitch a bold business idea, but feel terrified? That's a sign you should go for it. Or maybe you are afraid to post your artwork online. That fear means you care deeply about your creative expression. Or nervous about switching careers. That anxiety is likely pointing you toward your next big chapter. Understanding this changes how we approach decision-making. Instead of asking, "What's the safest choice?" we can start asking, "What scares me the most? And why does that mean it's worth doing?" What are the practical ways to follow fear? There are many, like, list what scares you. Write down the projects or decisions that trigger the most fear. Lean into discomfort. Choose to take small, courageous steps toward what scares you. Reframe fear as fuel. Use the energy of fear to propel you forward rather than hold you back. Remember the payoff. Fear tends to dissolve once you take action. Fear isn't a stop sign. It's a compass guiding you toward your true potential. But here's the thing. Fear doesn't disappear just because you've learned to embrace it. There's another element that keeps you grounded and focused. The power of a higher calling. 4. Serving a higher purpose. Why your work matters. Imagine you're building a beautiful cathedral. Every day, you lay bricks under the hot sun, your hands raw from the effort. One day, a traveler stops by and asks, "Why are you doing this backbreaking work?" The first worker grumbles, "I'm laying bricks." "What does it look like?" The second smiles and says, "I'm building a cathedral that will stand for centuries." Both workers are doing the same task, but their perspectives couldn't be more different. One is focused on the mundane act. The other is connected to a higher calling. Steven Pressfield argues that connecting to this higher purpose transforms your work from a grind into something meaningful and transcendent. So, why a higher calling matters? Pressfield introduces the idea that creative work isn't just about personal achievement. It's a contribution to the world. Whether you're writing a book, starting a business, or composing music, your work can impact others in ways you may never fully understand. And here's the crucial part. When you view your work as a service to something greater than yourself, you gain strength and resilience. Resistance becomes less powerful because it's no longer just about you. It's about serving a mission. Pressfield shares that during his lowest moments as a writer, he would remind himself that his job wasn't just about creating a bestseller. It was about telling stories that might resonate with even one reader who needed them. This shift helped him push through countless rejections and failures because the work became about more than his ego or success. It became about service. Why it matters to you? Because when you're driven by a higher purpose, setbacks become easier to endure. You stop obsessing over external validation and start focusing on the value you're bringing to others. A teacher who sees their work as shaping future leaders will endure tough days with more grace. An entrepreneur who views their product as solving a meaningful problem will persist through funding rejections. An artist who creates for the love of sharing beauty will keep going, even if their early work goes unnoticed. I once met a musician who struggled to stay motivated. He loved composing music, but was disheartened by the lack of recognition. After reading The War of Art, he changed his perspective. Instead of focusing on fame, he decided to compose for the sheer joy of moving people with sound. One day, a stranger messaged him, saying that his music had helped them through a dark time. That message ignited something in him, and he realized that his purpose was to create, not for applause, but for connection. There are many practical ways to connect with a higher purpose. 1. Ask yourself why. What impact do you want your work to have on others? 2. Create a vision statement. Write down the higher purpose behind your work. 3. Focus on the audience, not the outcome. Think about the people who will benefit from your work. 4. Find meaning in small wins. Even if your work doesn't reach a massive audience, recognize the difference you're making for the few who do experience it. I once spoke to a podcaster who struggled with self-doubt. Their audience was small, and they wondered if it was worth continuing. But then they received an email from a listener who said the podcast had helped them overcome loneliness. That moment redefined the podcaster's motivation. They stopped worrying about numbers and focused on serving those few loyal listeners who needed them. So what's the final takeaway from The War of Art? True fulfillment comes not just from beating resistance or turning pro, but from creating work that serves something larger than yourself. And remember, the world needs your unique contribution. There's no one else who can bring your voice, your ideas, and your creativity into existence the way you can. Resistance will never fully disappear, but when you commit to turning pro, following your fear, and serving a higher calling, you'll find a strength that keeps you moving forward. The path won't always be easy, but it will always be worth it. And as Pressfield reminds us, the world doesn't need more dreams. It needs dreamers who do the work. If you've ever felt trapped by self-doubt or struggled to live authentically, our next video on the 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz will reveal timeless wisdom to break free and create a life of peace and personal power. Stick around. This is one you don't want to miss. See you in the next video.